it as a YouTube or something?
Well, you definitely should use it also. I mean, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
All right. So we're live in Facebook and well, I'm live with Amy. She's sitting in the screen across from me. And she is the Barefoot Dragonfly, a wonderful resource in our community. And I'll let her introduce herself, and then we will get into her background in construction, growing up with a general contractor as a dad and being his right hand gal. And yeah, go from there and answer any questions.
Awesome. That's perfect.
Take it away.
Yay. I've always been a bit of a science geek, a research geek. I love reading and trying to understand data. Certainly try to have an evidence-informed practice. I think all of us are in that category of like, okay, how do we understand research that's being conducted? So early on with the pandemic, there was a lot of conversation of it's airborne, it's airborne, it's airborne. And I'm like, I don't understand a lot about what this means. So I did a bunch of deep dives and then was like, oh, okay, I need to have a better understanding of what this translates into my practice. So that's what I wanted to chat a bit about, what I've been learning, what I've been understanding, try to break down some of the nuts and bolts of it and make it a little bit more accessible instead of all of us having to read hundreds of research papers and going, this is overwhelming.
Yeah, thanks for doing that for us. I like the TLDR breakdown.
Yes, this is your TLDR version. What we currently know about airborne viruses in an indoor setting.
Yeah. So. And before you even get started, though, you are a clinical aromatherapist and reflexologist.
And I'm a board certified reflexologist. So my practice is very much indoors. I don't, not doing yoga in the park. Right. So certainly having to translate this information into something that I could use within my practice was my end goal. And so happy to sort of share what I learned along the way. But in my past life, before I went into the holistic healing field, my dad was a general contractor, built houses, green builder in northern New Mexico, beautiful area. So I've done everything from assisting with blueprint designs and translating that into, okay, we have a building that's this size by this size. How much insulation do we need? What cubic feet do we need for this? So my brain is used to, oh, hello.
Sorry, I just saw there's someone doing something outside and I know he was gonna freak out. So I'm comforting him.
So we have a guest. I love it. So yes, I wanted to have a sense of how do I take that information and translate that past experience. So that's what I've done for my practice. So
cool.
But yeah,
take us through it, because this is all kind of new. When you responded to a post about the cubic square feet and the ventilation,
it feels overwhelming if this is not your area. It's like,
I was like, what? I mean, and I'm pretty in the weeds, in the office. We're doing mostly telemedicine, but I am seeing some patients in the office, but I had not, this is not in the medical, nobody's talking about this, even in the medical realm. So this is kind of interesting.
We need to be. We all need to be talking about this, from restaurants and classrooms to doctors' offices, reflexology studios, everywhere.
Right.
Anytime you're going to be in a enclosed space for a short period of time. So one of the things that I've read over and over and over again from the aerosol scientists that are doing researchers are talking about visualizing, since we can't see it, it's airborne, but it's invisible to the human eye. We can't see it, it's naked. It's just floating in the space. To think about it as like smoke, cigarette smoke. And knowing that, I mean, think of a time when you've been sitting outside at a restaurant, somebody's 20, 25 feet away, and you can still smell their cigarette smoke. And that's how that aerosol is traveling. And so I think that's helpful to have a visual. I'm a visual person. And so for me, like, it's an invisible virus. How do we fight it? What do we do with this? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
So
I personally am super sensitive to smells, so I can sense something before a lot of other people smell it. So yeah, it's long.
It can be very far reaching. And that article, I think I have it pulled up here. Let me see if I've got it to share. This one, I think, is a good one to see. Just getting my screen here. This one is based on a Korean study that they published in the Los Angeles Times last week. So a diner at an outdoor eating, at a restaurant, an outdoor cafe, was infected sitting 20 feet away from someone.
Wow, that's crazy.
So smoke is our visual learner here. Smoke is definitely our capacity to visualize that. And so thinking of when we use basic universal precautions for infection control, we're thinking about, like, okay, every patient or every client that's walking through the door could have a communicable disease, a bloodborne pathogen. Now think about adding to your standard routine of everyone walking through the door is smoking a cigarette. How do you control that?
And not that this is just for Corona. I mean, this could be, the flu.
There's a number of viruses.
And novel chickenpox, yeah, viruses that we don't even, that are yet to present. Yep. Unfortunately, that's, this is not the only virus that we're going to see.
Tuberculosis. I've had a number of nurses that work in, facilities that have a very high TB rate, and it's airborne, and you can wear a lot of PPE, and that's one layer, sort of that, that Swiss cheese analogy that's been going around, like, here's your one layer with your holes, and here's your next layer when the holes are kind of we're trying to add layers. So that we're reducing. So PPE as one, wearing masks or wearing goggles and these types of things help to prevent these aerosolized virus particles coming towards your mucous membranes. But the next step is then to see if we can remove them from the air.
Yeah.
And
okay. So show us how to do that.
To achieve that completely, we see that in the ICU units, which you probably have some experience with. My ICU experience is limited.
Thank God.
As far as, practitioner going and doing outcalls in the ICU, I've only done that a handful of times. So I haven't spent more than, maybe 5 hours in an ICU total. But when we have an infectious patient in an ICU, they have a pressurized room where they're just pulling all of the air out, and it's got a double door system for extra airlock. This is not possible in my studio. This is probably not possible in your medical practice.
No.
So we can't achieve zero risk. We cannot completely remove every particulate from the air, but we can remove a large amount of them. So what I did, I initially had to find out what the size of room it was that I had. So I got a tape measure out and I measured my floor space. How wide was it? By how long was it? And you multiply those two numbers and you get your square footage of that room. A typical treatment room is going to be about 10 foot by 10 foot. Let's say some are smaller, the dimensions might be different, but your average exam room in an office, you know, any type of medical building or a wellness type of practice is usually about 100 square feet. So we then take that 100 square feet, so 10 by 10, 10 times 10, 100, and we need to determine how much breathable air it is. So if we could go in with square boxes and fill up that entire space, that would give us our cubical breathing room. That's how much breathing air is accessible in that room. And keeping in mind, if you've got a smoker sitting in that room, you have saturated every cubic inch of that room. So we do need a way to, you know, move the air through the entire room. And that's one of the challenges. So when you're looking at an air purifier, you want to have an understanding of how much volume it's moving, how much the fan is moving through there. There's a lot of really big, fancy, very expensive machines out there on the market. So far, we don't have a machine that has proven that they can remove SARS-CoV-2 from the air. And so if they're making those claims, that's going to be an issue that's going to, the FTC is going to have some conversations with them about that. So you're not looking for a model that's guaranteed. We're looking for a way to capture it is aerosolized, but it's also coming out through our respiratory fluids, right?
Right, droplet.
So the droplets are bigger than the virus. The virus is floating in this droplet of, you know, just saliva, snot.
Mm-hmm.
We're humans. We make juicy
Tears, probably.
Tears. Mm-hmm.
Sweat.
So, you know, having that, you know, the virus is very small and it would normally go through a filter, but the virus is not all by itself. That's why the cloth masks work so well, because you're capturing those larger droplets that are coming out through talking, breathing, singing, whatever, laughing, coughing, sneezing, right? Does that make a little sense? Am I going over?
No, you're good. So my question is, there are a few, so your suggestion is finding an air purifier. So would a HEPA filter be enough? Is that?
I would recommend a HEPA or a HEPA equivalent. There's the cool thing with HEPA is, and some of the HEPA equivalent ones are that they have the electrostatic charge, which is going to act as a magnet to pull those things and hold them onto that air filter until you replace it, which works well in our favor because we want them trapped in that filter. We don't want them to just, you know, if you turn a ceiling fan on, you're just moving the smoke around, right?
Uh-huh.
It's not leaving the space, it's just moving it, and more likely than not with a fan you're going to blow it into somebody's eyeball and that's how they're going to get sick. Okay. So I want to share that CDC has some guidelines. There's a table about what we could anticipate if we're using clicking the chat button, and I mean to click the share screen button, sorry.
Okay.
Here we go.
It's all a learning process.
So this is the CDC's air changes hour, or ACH. That's how many times you can anticipate that you're going to change the breathing air, so that, you know, imagine that room filled with your little cubicle moving boxes, right? All of that air needs to be moved, and that's how we are able to understand. So in a typical room, if you open one window on one side and one window on the other side, you're going to have about 1 air change per hour. Okay. So what this table gives us a sense, if you had 4 windows in that room, you'd have about 2 air changes an hour. So it would take you 138 minutes, over 2 hours, to remove 99% of the smoke or this aerosolized virus, right?
Mm.
If you want to get 99.9, you need to get down to all the nooks and crannies, all the places that it's hiding out in. It's going to take 207 minutes. That's a long time to wait between clients to air a room out,
Yeah.
right? So what I did, I'm lucky. I've got 2 windows in my studio here, so I put a box fan in one window and I open the other window. So the box fan exhausts, it pulls the air out of the room, and then fresh air passively enters through the other window. And with a big box fan like that, I can get about 50 air changes an hour. So I only have to run it for about 8 minutes between clients to achieve 99.9% removal of airborne virus. I still have to wipe surfaces down. I still have to use a disinfectant, but that cuts down my cleanup time and the amount of time that I have to, essentially quarantine a room
Yeah.
in between clients.
So how did you measure, or how do you know that you get 50 ACH with that method?
So I looked up on my box fan how many cubic feet per minute the fan can move. I determined how much square footage I had, or multiplied that by an 8-foot ceiling. So 100 square feet, a 10 by 10 foot room with an 8-foot ceiling. So we would 10 by 10 by 8, and we would get our full room space. So we're looking at having to move a pretty decent volume of air. And so I looked up, okay, how many cubic feet per minute can my box fan move? And then pulled that up. I actually did a little blog post. I'll share it so you can see what that looks like.
Share it.
Again, I'm a visual learner and a visual teacher, so I like sharing.
Yes, I get that.
So I'm just going to scroll down. I did my little introduction over there. So this is what I was finding. My room is 18 feet wide by 20 feet long. It's a converted 2-car garage. It was converted in the 90s. So I have 360 total square feet. Okay. I do 18 feet wide, 20 feet long by 8 feet high. That's how tall my ceilings are. So I have 2,880 cubic feet of air that I have to move. So I need something that's going to really have a big turnover. I ended up buying a couple of the Blue Air purifiers because they've got a smaller footprint. They don't take up a very large amount of space. They have a lower electric wattage pull because I'm running these on high all day long. And you don't want your electric bill to go from something very manageable to something completely unmanageable, especially when most of us are not seeing as many people. Our income has taken a hit this year. Like, we're already adding expenses. So when you're shopping around, when you're thinking about that, that's something to think about for budgeting perspectives. So I was able to look up the cubic feet per minute for the air purifiers. I was able to look up the cubic feet per minute for the box fan. And then I'm going to scroll down here and show you what that looks like. So on low with my box fan, I have 33 air changes per hour. On medium, I have 37 and a half. And on high, I have 41.6. And I have a link that shows you how to determine these numbers. So to get this math here, because it does take a second. But I wanted to share that understanding that you've got to move, what's your capacity for your fan to move? How big is your space? Those are your 2 big things that you need to find out on your own, and then crunching those numbers. And I'll include all the links in the comments so people can kind of suss that out and go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
I'm actually on your website now, and I'll get it for people right now.
Excellent.
But so, okay, so we see, you know, I have, for example, have opened up a online store, and
Mhm.
there are, you know, HIPAA filters and things on there.
Yep.
And, you know, it says that they have a medical grade carbon
Filter.
filter, and then they have a military grade on top of it. And I haven't, you know, I haven't really like researched any of this. These products were pretty much selected for me.
Mhm.
And I thought they'd be a good idea. Who doesn't want clean air and
Right.
allergens and all that stuff?
Well, we live in Central Texas. We've got,
Yeah.
very resistant mold that loves to hang out in the air
Yes.
year
And
round.
pollens and all that. So, um, you know, but are most of them on the market kind of just making claims that they can't
No,
fulfill?
some of them are making claims. There was a really big draw early on for people to get the filters that couple it with the UV lights.
Mm-hmm.
That was very popular early on. And I will note the UVC lights need 15 minutes of full time exposure to the virus particles to take them out. Do you accomplish that if you keep running a fan? You're not, right? You're not actually killing things because you're running a fan constantly. So if you want to do UV light, I would look at the hospital grade ones. I would look at what your options are with the caveat knowing that you're going to essentially every item that you have in that room that has the UVC light running is going to be like trucking it out to the Sahara Desert or dropping it off somewhere. You're going to degrade your furniture really quickly because it's ultraviolet light. It is going to start tearing up your upholstery, rapid aging, everything that it comes into contact with. Now, the UVC light, you cannot be in the room with it. It's harmful to vision. Just like staring in the sun is not good for you.
Right. We don't
So
think
it's
about
one of
that. We
it's
don't.
one of those things that, I would say it's at this point, it's just a fancy nightlight attached to an air purifier. So when I'm shopping for an air purifier, I'm looking at the overall cost. How much is it going to cost me to run it? How much is it going to cost me to replace the filters? Because those are, I've seen somewhere I'm like, ooh, this is a really super affordable air purifier. And the filters cost as much as the machine does. And I have to replace those every
Yeah.
30, 60, 90 days, whatever it is. And that's a lot.
I'm waiting for mine to come in right now for my bedrooms ones because, and I am a lazy person, right? I'm the first to admit, like, I'll take my car at the last, I'll push it to the max. And same with the filters. Like, I don't change my filters. I forget. It's just
Yep.
not something that is on my mind. Now my water filters I'll change, but like because there's like a reminder, but
Right.
filters you just don't even think about. But I just ordered some and they're on their way and they're expensive.
They're spendy. I tell you, it's not, because my room is about the size of 3 treatment rooms and a small waiting area. So
Yeah.
it's a large space. So I have to have 2 very large air purifiers, things that'll move a lot of volume
Right.
in a short amount of time.
Huh.
And so I've got 2 filters that I have to replace
Yeah.
frequently, and it's spendy, but that combination of having fresh air exchange for my ventilation and air purification, I wouldn't see clients in person without that.
Yeah. So you have the 2 filters running
Yep,
and the box fan going,
with both windows open.
both windows open all day.
Whenever I'm seeing a client, yep.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's the ante quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, and you know, it, if you're in a space where you don't have the capacity for the external ventilation, you don't have windows that open, um, we can capture some of the viral particles in with an air purifier. But think about hospitals that are normally used to having people that are coming in that are sick, that are coughing, that are sneezing. That CDC guideline that is specific to airborne contaminants, and they're recommending that you have fresh air coming from outside into your space. So if you don't have a window that you can open, you need to talk to your building supervisor about opening up the HVAC system and bringing in more fresh air through the HVAC system, so that when it's running, so that when your air conditioner is running or your heat's running, that you've got fresh air that's
Right.
being pulled into that system. It's doable, it's possible. It's going to take your HVAC repair guy who normally comes out and services it, in the spring and in the fall. He's going to come out and do some adjustments on that. But that would be, if you don't have windows, or you're uncomfortable using windows, because it does change. I have to have a separate air conditioner unit in my studio when I'm seeing clients on a hot day, and I need space heaters on a cold day,
Right, right.
because you've got outside air coming inside.
Yeah.
And there's not, we're here in Texas in the winter time, it's nice, but tell you what, leave your windows open in the summer.
No thanks.
And so our friends that are north of us, that, it's snowing. Oh, sure, I'll just leave a couple windows wide open, Amy. Sounds great. Like, you know, so there's ways to bring in fresh air. It's challenging for like school classrooms, especially older school classrooms that have never had ventilation before. They're sitting there trying to figure out how to put a box fan against like a cantilevered window that's like at an angle, and that's not, we're going to have to make some big changes. And I think for us to all move forward, we're going to need to have
Yeah.
to keep spaces safe indoors. We're all going to have to make some efforts to
Right, right.
adjust.
Yeah. Well, that's life, I guess. And
It
yeah,
is. And, we've had airborne viruses with us for a long time. I love hearing from my friends in Australia that had the mildest cold flu season ever, because everybody's wearing masks and ventilating their spaces. They
right.
just had their winter.
I keep saying we're going to have like such a great flu season, because hopefully, I mean, who knows, but um, nobody's shaking hands. No, we're not coughing in people's faces. We're
Right.
masked. We're hand sanitizing. We're mostly socially distancing, and I guess this is probably what we should have been doing all along, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, to degrees,
During flu
the,
season, maybe like a little more. And ironic, I always laughed at people I would see from Asian countries in our country wearing a mask in the
yeah,
airport, and I'm like, they're so paranoid. Well, they've
and
seen so many
it's not
outbreaks.
paranoia, it's based on experience with,
Yeah,
and a
yeah,
cultural norm, that,
right,
yeah, I think probably we should get used to the idea of wearing masks in public
right, right.
in
So
the winter months when everybody's vitamin D is really low.
yeah,
you know
yeah. So
be mindful of other people. And it's interesting, the vaccines. I'm excited that they're coming out. I'm excited that this is, that there's light at the end of the tunnel. But the vaccine is preventing against the disease
right,
and not against transmission. We
right,
haven't proven that it's going to, reduce people's risk of contracting SARS-CoV-2 or being a vector and giving it to other people.
right.
So we're going to go from, right now, I think our average is 40 to 45% of people are asymptomatic when they're testing positive.
Hmm.
We're probably going to see somewhere between 70 and 75% of asymptomatic carriers. So we need to be comfortable wearing masks and ventilating our spaces.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Now,
for a while.
right. Right. And then there are other viruses to come. I've been saying this
Absolutely.
for actually one of my cousins. He swine flu, he's kept me up to date. Bird avian flu. I mean, all these things that he has been super paranoid about. And I'm like, I have my master's in public health. I mean, I learned a long time ago. These are all threats, and we've just
Yes.
been waiting for this to happen. If this is not, anyway, that's a whole nother story.
Well, and
Uh,
we've been out of harmony with our relationship with nature for
mhm,
so long, our relationship with, animals, and
right.
this is what we get. And, it's something that we need to be very mindful of and prepare for. And I think where in our professions where we work person to person and we might be sitting in a room with somebody for more than a couple of minutes, this is something that we should be aware of and doing the best we can. I'm not comfortable going and sitting in a waiting room anymore. I don't think any of us are. You're like, "Ooh." Yeah, I had to go to the dentist for my cleaning, and I called them up and I was like, okay, so weird question. What's your air exchange per hour rate? And they're like, oh, I know this. And I was like, you do? Fantastic. So
Wow.
they have, my dentist office has a 20 air changes per hour rate. They got on top of it really early. They changed the intake for 60% of fresh air coming into the building through the HVAC system. They run their fan constantly. Whether there's air conditioner or heat to go with it, it runs whenever there's people in there. And, they've got little air purifiers at each station. And I was like, oh, I could take my mask off in here and not be, we're going to have some PTSD for a while. So I think this is going to be
Wow.
something that,
Amazing. Okay, good for them.
but
Um,
they're working very closely one to one.
yeah. I mean, my cousin's a dentist, and he just got COVID and he was fine, but he had to shut down the office for a few weeks, which is
Yeah.
income that could have probably been prevented with proper ventilation. Who knows? I don't
And
know.
who knows, it could be months down the road and he ends up developing, myocarditis or one of
Yeah,
the,
hopefully
you know,
not.
like we're knocking on wood, hoping that people are having
Right,
you know,
right. Those
there is an interesting theory that the dose makes the poison with relationship to how much viral exposure you have. And so I have some reassurances there when I do need to see people in person that I'm actively trying to remove as much of the virus from our collective breathing space so that if I'm a carrier and infect a client or a client's a carrier and infects me, in either scenario, either of us would have a lesser reaction
right.
is what
Yeah,
I'm hoping for. Trying to make it safer because right now it's not safe unless we all live in bubbles, and that's not really possible for a lot of us.
yeah. And
I
not
can't do body work without a
touching.
body in front of
Right.
me.
Now we're about time, but Gray wanted to know if there's a specific brand HEPA filter that you recommend.
So I'm really liking the Blue Air. It's a HEPA equivalent. It's got a really nice
Lot of
electrostatic
PPE,
charge.
and that's
Sorry. I was going to answer his question and it took me to another pop-up of the Facebook.
Oh,
Sorry.
oh.
Blue Air.
So Blue Air, it's a Swedish brand, and I'm liking it. I was able to find a couple of them through Costco for a much lower rate. So I would recommend if you're shopping around, check the big warehouse companies for if you're going, I think I might like this model. Seeing if there's something, because I mean, who of us have not spent several $1,000s on disinfectants and PPE and all that jazz this year already?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it gets spinny, especially if you're trying to get an air purifier into every treatment. If you're in a multi-treatment room space, that's gonna add up pretty quickly.
Okay. Cool. Well, anything else you can think of that you wanted to add?
Not off the top of my head. I think I've covered a lot. I don't want to be so overwhelming to people that they're like, oh my goodness, I can't
Well,
do
I
this.
posted your blog post with the ventilation and the Blue Air Swedish brand from Costco and my air filters on my store, which they have clinical evidence behind, but I don't for allergens, but I'm not sure about bacteria and viruses, but they do claim to have that. And, you know, exciting stuff.
I will share the link for this, but can I share the screen for 2 seconds? I'll take one more moment of your time. This is an app that's been put together by some researchers, and I really like it to have an understanding of where your risks are. So you've got a table over here with tabs, and then you've got your output. So you put in your information. We don't have a 900 square foot room. Say we have a 100 square foot room. It's your average treatment room with an 8-foot ceiling. If you're using just your basic HVAC unit, that would be your mechanical ventilation. This is going to give you about 3 air changes an hour. You could select your filtration system. If you're using a standard industrial one, it's like a MERV 6 rating. When you go to buy the furnace filters, they'll give you a MERV rating on there. And so most of the commercial ones are going to be a 6. It could be that you don't have any. Maybe you keep forgetting to buy your furnace replacement filter, and so you're not actually filtering anything. It's just air moving around. So this gives you a way to kind of toggle that. If it's you as the practitioner and one patient or one client, this is your rating. Your humidity is bad because there's a cold front moving in that's very dry. So your room's humidity is about 30%. Let's tab over to human behavior real quick. You're both, one of you is probably standing for an intake, or if you're doing body work, massage therapy, chiropractic, something like that. You're probably not whispering at each other. Maybe you have a client that is hard of hearing, and so you're talking loudly. Maybe you're wearing a disposable surgical type mask, but your client's wearing a cotton flannel mask, and their fit compliance is actually really bad. It gapes at the sides and it's fogging up their glasses. So based on all of this that we've put in there, and down here's your risk tolerance. Say you have someone who's going through, chemotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
They can be in the room with you for about 7 minutes before it's become unsafe.
Okay.
If you change and adjust these, if the mask compliance is better, it goes for a little bit longer. If you're not working on somebody, maybe somebody who has a more robust immune response, they don't have an autoimmune issue and they're not immunocompromised. Maybe you're not talking loudly, you're talking normally. So, this starts to change as you change the room specification. So I think it's the Hero KU app, indoor COVID safety. I'll share the link in the chat box, but
yeah, that's amazing.
I think it's a really great way to visually go, okay, how big is my room? What are my risks? And what could I anticipate? And so, if you've got, I'm seeing most of the people that I work with are in an immune compromised space. And so for me, I can't compromise on their safety and my safety.
Right. Yeah, no, me neither. I agree.
So it's a really great, I'm a visual person and I like kind of toggling it, and it's like, oh, okay. So if I have, if they bring in someone to help, so then I've got 3 people in this tiny room. What if my room's not even 100 square feet? What if it's a bitty closet kind of a, understanding that. And I think that can also be helpful for, are you going to go to a conference anytime soon?
Yeah.
How many people are going to be there? How big is
Traveling
that?
on a plane or,
Right.
all the things. So, wow, that's a great resource. Thank you for sharing.
It's a cool little app. So I'll share it so that
Yeah.
folks
And
can have
thank you for
access.
all your research and your information. It's always a pleasure. You're always very well researched and
Thank you.
evidence-based.
Thank
And
you.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So,
Well,
thank
thanks
you.
for
And
letting
then,
me share.
yeah, if people have more further questions, they can contact you through
They can
Facebook,
contact me. Yeah, they're welcome to reach out to
website.
me. I'm happy
Yeah.
to point them to some more resources, and I'll add these links and stuff. So if folks want to do a little more deep dive of like, how did we get to this idea of smoke? Tell me more about that. If you're a bit of a research geek like I am, then those will interest you and you can kind of go down some rabbit holes. So
I'm so grateful for research geeks like you because I am not a research geek when it comes to this kind of stuff. I mean, my eyes kind of glaze over and I'm like, but it's so important right now. And, we got to keep people safe and
yeah,
we do what we can. So,
as safe as we can. And
right.
when
No
we
guarantees, but
when we know better, we do better. And this is us knowing better and doing,
yeah, the more you know.
exactly. Love it.
All right. Well, have a great rest of the week. And
Thank
thank you
you.
again. And it's good to see your face.
You as well.
All
Take
right.
care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.